Thanks to everybody for joining us. Really super stoked that you're here to be with us on our next installment of the Music Theory Workshop. Today we're going to be talking about intervals. Super critical to understand intervals because it's related to chords, it's related to scales, it's how chords are built, arpeggios, it's really critical to understand. If you get this one thing, it can clarify a lot of things in your mind. So thanks for being here, everybody. Really appreciate it. If you have comments, questions, please post those in the old comment box. If you, wherever you're watching this, if you could subscribe, turn on notifications, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube thing. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and turn the notifications on so you can be notified every time we produce a new one of these. We're doing a whole series. It's called the Music Theory Workshop Series. Everything you're going to be learning today, guys, is covered in Steve's Music Theory Masterclass, which is available at guitarzoom.com. It is a classic, what we call flagship course that people just absolutely love, everybody who's enrolled in it. So if you've always been wanting to buckle down and learn music theory from A to Z, from the ground up, Steve's Music Theory Masterclass is the thing for you. Today, we're covering intervals. And if you got questions, guys, make sure you put it in the box there, and we will try our best to help you out. And by the way, if anybody could just pop in the old comments, guitarzoom.com, so anybody who wants to go check that out can. That would be super helpful to us as well. I'm Dan Denley, founder of Guitar Zoom. This is my sidekick, Steve Stine, chief guitarist in residence and instructor extraordinaire for 30-something years. And today you're going to be in for a real treat, guys. Intervals. Take it away, Steve.
Okay, so what we're going to basically be doing is just trying to learn to understand the names of the intervals and how they apply on the guitar. And of course, you could start anywhere on the guitar. I'm just so it kind of makes sense in terms of my camera angle here, because if I switch my camera angle over here so you can see that, you're really only seeing this. So I'm going to be at the 3rd fret here so you can kind of see the intervals that we're talking about back behind here. So if you think about it, if I was starting on the note G on the 6th string, and again, I could be anywhere on any string, but if I started here and I went 1 fret higher from 3 to 4, now if you remember, we've kind of talked about some of this before where we call that a half step, okay? Well, the technical term for that is a minor second. So when you go from 1 fret directly to the next fret, anywhere on the guitar, you know, you can go anywhere you want. Those are all called a minor second. So if we go to the next one, if I go from 3 to 5, that's a whole step that we learned earlier. That's called a major second. Okay? And then we've got the next one here. We're going to the pinky. Okay? So when I go from 1st finger to pinky, 3rd fret to 6th fret, now I'm playing what's called a minor third. And we're going to be looking at these, as Dan said, we're going to be looking at these a little bit later in terms of scales and chords and things like that. But that's a minor third. Okay, now here's where it might change a little bit. Now remember that the guitar is unique. I always think of the guitar when I teach people about the guitar. I always tell them the guitar is kind of like having, because it has 6 strings, it's kind of like having 6 pianos that are off-centered from each other. So instead of just going this way on the piano, you can go this way, but you can go this way too, right? So for instance, when I get here to this minor third, I'm actually technically in this case going from G to B flat or A sharp, whatever you'd like to call that. But if you think about it, I could take that note and put it here. So that's where the guitar can get a little confusing, and we're not going to go really deep into that, but I want you to understand that intervals can overlap in different places on the guitar because the guitar is tuned the way it is. Okay? So minor second, major second, minor third, and if I go up one more again, I'm going to have a major third. And if I go over here, so I'm going from G to B, that's a major third. Okay? Any questions yet, Dan?
No, I just want to make sure everybody understands that, like, for example, you just played that G to the B there on the 5th string. Yep. People might recognize that particular interval from their G chord.
That's right.
So the major third is the first interval in a G chord, guys.
And if you
That's
remember our conversation about our triads, we talked about major thirds and minor thirds. Well, now
yeah.
you're seeing them in action.
Yes. And speaking of that, guys, you can always go back and check out that video. We're going to put this whole series on YouTube as a playlist. This could be, you could just search up Steve Stine Music Theory Workshop. And we're going to put every single one of these videos in this series there. So if you missed anything, you can always start back at video 1 and go all the way through. So this major third, we did talk about major thirds and minor thirds in the chord video, and now you're seeing how this is related. When you stack these certain intervals, they produce chords. That's why we're going through all of this. You understand diatonically how these things are built from the root. But then we're going to have another video where we talk about chords and how all the different intervals that make up different types of chords. Okay, so you might be like, why do I need to know this? Just trust me, you need to know this.
Right. And here's the other thing too, before we move on, just understand that I'm starting on G, but obviously I could go anywhere I want. I could move up to B, and this is still a minor second. And this is still a major second. And this is still a minor third. And this is still a major third. So it's about the distance between two notes. It's not about what the starting note is called. It doesn't matter if you're starting on G, or you're starting on D, or you're starting on A. Those series of half steps or whole steps that they're created from gives it its name. So if it's a half step, no matter where you are on a guitar, on a piano, on any instrument, if you play a half step, it's called a minor second. If you play a whole step, it's called a major second. If you play a step and a half, it's called a minor third. If you play 2 whole steps, it's called a major third. So just think of it that way. So again, I'm just using G as an example, but we could have been anywhere. So let's keep going. So we've got minor second, minor third, major third. Okay, so now we're going to stack them. So I'm on G. Remember, I left off there. Okay, so I did minor second, minor third, which is also here, major third, which is also here. Okay, so now I'm going to go from here to here. And that's called a perfect fourth. Right underneath that finger is a perfect fourth. Okay, and then when I go to the next one here, that note right there, we're going to come back and talk about some of the different names of these things, but right now I'm calling this a diminished fifth. So I'm going from the root, the G, to the diminished fifth here. Okay? And then my next one would be a perfect fifth. So you have a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth, okay, with the diminished 5 in the center. And then if I go over to my pinky here, that is a minor sixth. So I have minor second, minor third, or excuse me, major second, sorry about that, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, diminished 5, perfect fifth, minor sixth, okay, and then over here would be the major sixth. Now that major sixth is getting a little wide there, so I can take that note and put it right there on the 4th string, and that's a major sixth. And then we have the minor 7, okay, the major 7, and then the octave. Okay, and those are all the notes within the context of one octave, and of course those can get repeated in multiple octaves wherever you go. But that's what the first thing is that we want to figure out, is understanding when somebody says something to us like a major 7, we want to know what they're talking about, okay? And there's 2 different ways of doing that. Number 1 is you want to be able to apply it to your guitar, and number 2, you want to know what those intervals are in your head. Okay, so if we're going to, in just a little bit here, we're going to apply this to the major scale so you can see how all of this actually works, since we've already been talking about the major scale.
Nice.
But yeah, those are the intervals that we want to start with for sure.
I love it. So guys, what we're talking about right here is measuring the distance between any 2 notes. Okay, and we're measuring the distance between the root note, which in this example that Steve just showed you is G on the 6th string, Okay, so 3rd fret, 6th string. That note is G. And then we're just measuring, well, how far is it from G to an A flat? G to an A flat. That's a minor second. Okay. And then G to the A. That's your major second. And it's just going up from there. Now, you can't just play, if you played those, it's just it's all the notes of a diatonic scale. And there's different names for these intervals depending on the context. But don't get too hung up on that. So if you're like, well, what about an augmented fourth? Or what about
and we can talk about that quick so everybody has some reference of those. But if you really think about this right here, what we're playing is the chromatic scale, right? This is all the notes that are available. And remember what we talked about if you joined us a while back, where we talked about how the chromatic scale is really just a dictionary of all the notes. This doesn't really make any musical sense as it is right now, just all of this. We have to pull some of these things out like we did when we created the major scale, and that's the next thing I'm going to show you is if I pull those out and make a major scale out of this, then we're going to see that certain ones of these actually work better together to create things we're familiar with, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sort of thing.
Nice. Okay. So what I think we should do, Steve, is why don't we do that? You want to do that in this video or want to do it in another video?
Well...
What you're going to talk about right now? I mean,
I'm just going to show them which ones they were in the major scale, but if you think we should do it in another video, we certainly can.
Well, it's okay. We can do that here. Yeah, let's do it now then. We got time. We got is time, brother.
Right. Okay. So if we think about this, if we're going from the root to the major second, to the major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, and major seventh. Those are the ones that are contained in the major scale. So when you go practicing this thing, that's what I want you to think about. It's just the fact that you're putting in the root, major sixth, or excuse me, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and then the root again. So right there, you can see that those are what we use to create the major scale.
Nice. So can you play it now, Steve, and go from the root to the major second, the root to the major third, the root to the perfect fourth, so they can hear those intervals? And guys, what I want you to do is really listen, because he just played the major scale, and now he's going to play the root to each one of those, and you're going to hear, oh yeah, that sounds like something musical. That's because it's coming directly from the major scale, not just the diatonic, which is what we began with.
Okay.
Nice.
Remember, I can move this if I want to play this B over here. You know, that's the uniqueness of the guitar, is we can play these in lots of different places all over the guitar. I just want you to notice that these are the intervals that we most associate with when we're talking about the major scale.
Mm-hmm. And that thing's totally modular. So we just happened to choose G, and he just moved it. What was that, F sharp? You just played?
I just played it in G.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
But so yeah, can you show them how like that would just is equally work in any other key?
Sure. If I move it up, and again, the names become kind of irrelevant at this point, right? If I move up to B, 7th fret, I can think whole step or major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth.
And that little exercise, guys, would be a fantastic picking and finger exercise for you to practice.
Absolutely.
Just all the way up your fretboard and all the way down, even as a sort of warm up. And if you really want to get crazy with it, actually sing those as you're playing it, because that will help you with your ear training as well.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you really want to get even crazier, you could go like, you could call out the intervals as you sing them, like major, well, sorry, you're not going to listen to me sing, but just call them.
Right. Well, and the cool thing too is that as an exercise, I'll just move back down to G so you can see my hand here. You know, the nice thing is that now if you know where the perfect fifth is, and of course that should remind you of a power chord, right? That's why a power chord is called a G5, because it's telling you it's the G with the fifth, G5. That's why power chords are named the way they are. But now you'd know, for instance, if you knew these intervals, you'd know that you have this diminished 5 below you, right? Or this minor 6th above you. I mean, it's nice to be familiar with what you need as far as the scale goes, but then if there's something awkward that happens or you need to change something, you'd know what those intervals are in between there as well.
Mm-hmm. I love it, dude. This is really, really good stuff and something I never really understood. So what do you think, Steve Stine? Should we press on with this? Or because I know we could talk about this, we can go like really, really deep because all these things, these intervals change depending on the scale that you're in and how you build chords. We can go a lot of different directions from
Yeah,
here.
I don't want to go into anything. I'd like to just stay in the major scale for now. I don't want to start switching to keys or anything like that. But one thing I will tell you, for instance, is be aware that sometimes, like the diminished 5, some people would refer to this as an augmented 4, right? Sometimes the terminology can be different. So if you're looking at this going, oh, you know, my teacher said it was whatever, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach terminology. Like a real generic terminology that I know, for instance, is the minor second is called a flat 2. The major second is called a 2. The minor third is called a flat 3. The major third is just called a 3. This is called a 4, flat 5, 5, flat 6, 6, flat 7, 7. Now, you don't want to get confused by that terminology, but I'm just saying different people talk differently about, you know, theory. So I just want you to kind of be aware of that there are different terms that you can use for different things. And again, we don't really need to go any deeper than that, but just understand that that's a real kind of generic term that people would use. If you're used to talking to somebody and they say 2, this is what they're talking about.
A major second.
Yeah, they're talking about a major second because if they wanted a flat 2, they would say flat 2.
Right.
Okay.
And that works perfectly. The only thing you need to remember, guys, is that a diminished, technically there's a difference between a minor and a diminished interval because only perfect intervals can be diminished or augmented.
But again,
don't worry about all that crap.
Yeah, exactly.
What you need to know is if you're in the real world, if somebody says a flat 5, they're talking about a diminished
That's right.
fifth.
So that's why it's nice to know the slang terminology. You can ask questions like, what is a perfect 4th and a perfect 5th and augmented and diminished, and those are all different things, demented if you want. Those are all different things that, of course, we would talk about in the master class anyway, but you know, you can ask those. I don't want to waste too much of your time, but just understand that you'll notice, like Dan said, between the perfect 4th and the perfect 5th is where you get these funky words like diminished and augmented, right? You don't see that anywhere else. But if you were talking in slang up here, most people would just call it a flat 5.
Yeah.
So.
And everybody and people know exactly what you're talking about who understand this stuff. And if somebody wants to argue with you about a diminished fifth or a flat 5, probably isn't worth it.
And that's it all depends. Like what I learned talking to other jazzers is that other jazz players is they don't all have the same language.
Right.
You know, I remember seeing an A2 and going, what's an A2? I thought it was A9. And he's like, it is an A9. It's an A2. I don't care what octave you play it in. I just want you to play the chord.
It just needs to contain that note.
That's interesting. You know, because I always thought of a 2, and again, this is between whoever understands this, but 2 always, like, for me, it always meant like sus2. Like, that's the only time I would see a 2. But I had a teacher once that was like, no, I mean 9. I'm just writing it as an A2.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can approach this stuff. So just be aware is all.
Yeah. And be open. And don't get caught up in the arguments. I think people get off in the weeds and the technicalities of this stuff, but let's all step back for a second and remember that the whole reason we're doing this is to become better musicians.
And have some semblance of language to speak to each other, for sure.
It's huge.
Yep.
We've talked about that. I don't think it'd be said enough is that really this whole theory thing, guys, is about understanding the language of music and musicians across styles and across generations, which is the same stuff that Mozart was using to compose music is the same stuff that we're using now. So it's not going to go anywhere. It's been around a very long time. So it's really important that if you're serious, you know, you want to learn this stuff, having some basics of the theory, and let's just be real honest too. Even as deep as Steve's masterclass is, and I promise you, it's as deep as you will ever need to go in theory, unless you're going to go teach it or unless you're going to go to get involved in some like inner jazz circles or something. You know what I mean? Like it's as deep as you need to go. But even as deep as it is, it's like maybe you can go a lot deeper. So I'm only saying that to say, don't worry if you feel overwhelmed right now. It's just like learning a language. You walk into Spanish class on day one when you're 14 years old and your teacher's speaking only Spanish just to freak you out a little bit. It's really overwhelming. And then on like that same day, you learn like how to say hello, you learn to say goodbye or whatever. It becomes less intimidating. And by the end of the year, you're rolling with your Spanish, or at least you feel a lot more comfortable. It's the same thing that we're doing here, guys. So don't get overwhelmed. Just stick with it and press on. And if you want to go deep into this stuff, I would highly recommend that you get enrolled in Steve's masterclass, Music Theory Masterclass. It's at guitarzoom.com. Steve, anything else you want to cover today, my friend?
No, I think that's enough for today for sure.
I think it is too. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking time out of your life to be here with us and spend with us. Hopefully you got some benefit from this. If you did, please like, share, comment, subscribe with notifications on, and we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Take care. Stay
Thanks
positive.
again.
Practicing. Yeah. Bye.
Absolutely.